If it isn't obvious, it is time for Joe Lacob to stop with the 2-timeline plan of his once and for all. He needs to let go of his ego and realize that his decision to go with this plan is single-handedly ruining the Warriors' chances of winning a 5th championship in the Stephen Curry era. Right now, it's not that hard to see what's going on. The Warriors are 4-7. They would be 3-8 had it not been for an impossible game by Stephen Curry, a legendary performance by one single guy that helped them to a 4-7 record rather than a 3-8 record. This Warriors season is quickly getting away from them, and unless the front office makes the proper changes on their roster and fundamentally change how they're going to go about building the roster moving forward for the remainder of Stephen Curry's prime, maybe Joe Lacob is satisfied with the fact that the Warriors have won 4 championships in his time. However, what he doesn't seem to realize is that the Warriors franchise as a whole, in its entire existence, before Stephen Curry had won 3 championships in the span of nearly 70 years. Before Stephen Curry, the Warriors had last won a championship in 1975. That was 40 years before Stephen Curry won the next one in his era. Championships don't come easy. There are 12 franchises in the NBA that have yet to win a single championship. There are 6 NBA teams that have never even made it to the finals. It is not easy to get to the final dance, let alone win it. You must have transcendent players to have a chance to win a single championship, let alone multiples. There are so many NBA legends throughout the history of the NBA that have never won a single title. Charles Barkley, Patrick Ewing, Karl Malone, John Stockton, Steve Nash, Chris Webber, Allen Iverson. There are an endless list of names throughout the course of NBA history. This stuff is not easy, and Steph Curry is making it look easy, which appears to be confusing the front office, the coaching staff, and especially the guy at the top. Joe Lacob is taking this situation for granted. The Warriors, without Steph Curry right now, would literally be the worst team in the league. They're one of the worst teams in the league right now with Stephen Curry. Why is that happening after they just won a championship? Well, we all know that they failed to keep Gary Payton. They failed to keep Otto Porter Jr. Why? Why did that happen? Well, it's a pretty simple situation. It's a matter of money and how much Lacob is willing to spend. It would have cost $8 million to keep Gary Payton on this roster for this season, $8 million next year, and $9 million the year after that. Lacob was not willing to do that. Meanwhile, they have James Wiseman, who is getting paid almost $10 million this year, getting almost $11 million next year. And then what? They have Jonathan Kuminga, who's getting nearly $6 million this year, $6 million next year. Now, I want to get into the details and the nuances of Wiseman and Jonathan Kuminga throughout the course of this video, but from a big picture standpoint, I am going to give you 5 reasons why Joe Lacob needs to cut it out, let go of his ego, and stop this 2-timeline thing, and stop screwing things up both for himself, Steph Curry, and the team. My name is Jim. I appreciate you watching this video. Now let's get straight to those 5 reasons. Reason number 1, you are completely and utterly disrespecting Stephen Curry. Everybody knows when Joe Lacob first bought the Warriors, he bought it for $400 million and change. You know what the Warriors are worth now? $7 billion. And it is going to continue to go up as long as Stephen Curry is on the roster creating magic and winning championships. That is why the value of this franchise has gone up as far as it has. And how is Lacob paying Steph Curry back for this? Look at what he's doing. He's literally talking about life after Steph Curry, talking about, oh, light years, oh, I'm going to continue to win games and try to win championships right after Steph Curry retires. I mean, this is just not realistic. There is a reason, number 1, that when transcendent players disappear from a franchise, those franchises suffer for a number of years. I understand that Lacob wants to beat the system and be above it all and continue to thrive and all these things, and it's a good idea in theory. But first and foremost, the timing is really off. The Warriors as an organization, as a front office, from the coaching staff and on, don't seem to realize what gold they have in Stephen Curry. And the evidence for that was provided last year when they went into the playoffs. Bob Myers told a little story after they won it all. He had a conversation with Steve Kerr, and apparently Steve Kerr told him that he had doubts on whether the Warriors would be able to win it all last year. And then they ended up winning it all. What kind of coach doesn't understand the level of talent that he has on his own roster and doubts a player of Stephen Curry's magnitude? And how foolish of Bob Myers to expose Kerr in that way and let the world know that neither he nor Steve Kerr believe that Curry leading this team can lead them to a championship. I mean, 2 years ago, that's precisely what happened. Steve Kerr would often go to the media talking about he's not chasing wins in a season like this. Meanwhile, the Warriors had Stephen Curry playing in MVP form, just out of this world, in an empty gym. Draymond Green playing at a defensive player of the year caliber level. Kevon Looney, at this point we all know how capable Kevon is. Andrew Wiggins, Jordan Poole, who by mid-season had come to form. And they also had other useful pieces like Kent Bazemore and JTA. Now, without Klay Thompson, obviously, they were not going to be as good. But guess what? There was another piece on the roster. His name is Gary Payton II. I'm actually floored when I think about that, because Gary Payton II, a cheat code on defense, was on their roster, practicing with them and all this, and somehow Steve Kerr kind of didn't recognize that he could somehow help this team more than guys like Brad Wanamaker, more than guys like Damian Lee, more than guys like Michael Mulder. I mean, think about it. The Warriors last year in the finals mostly ran all these guys minus Klay Thompson. That's literally all it was. And guess what? Without Klay Thompson last year, they went 18-2 with that very group, plus Otto Porter Jr. Obviously, that makes a big difference. But from a defensive standpoint, guys like Kent Bazemore, guys like JTA, were doing their jobs very capably. The Warriors never even got a chance to see the potential that they had 2 years ago because the front office didn't believe in Steph Curry like that. Bob Myers literally came out to the media at the end of the season talking about, oh, we knew obviously what Steph Curry can do, but this? We didn't know he could do this. This franchise, they make a mockery of themselves the way they talk about Steph Curry. What does it take for you to understand that your franchise couldn't win more than 3 championships in 70 years? Steph Curry is the reason you had 3 championships to that point. And he's the reason you have 4 now. And he's the reason you could get 5 and 6 and 7. The sooner everybody from the coaching staff to the front office to the ownership have a full understanding of what magical piece they have on their roster, the sooner they can make the correct moves in order for them to win more championships. Because the more championships you win, the more valuable your organization becomes, the more sales you can continue to make. You all have to fall in line. Now, I went on a huge tangent there, but this is so important because as I've given you some evidence, these guys in the front office and Steve Kerr, they've been sleeping for too long and they've been in this organization for way too long for them to continuously disrespect Steph Curry in this manner. And now nobody is doing it worse than Joe Lacob, who thinks it's okay to openly talk about life after Steph Curry and, oh, I'm gonna sacrifice parts of this season where they could win such an elusive thing that is a championship because, I don't know, because he's privileged, because he feels like, oh, I have 4 and it's easy to win. Oh, they won last year with the kids, so why can't they do it again this year, giving them a bigger role in all this? But are they even giving them a bigger role? Number one. Number two, was any single one of those kids usable by the time they went to the finals? No, as a matter of fact, even a guy like Jordan Poole, who was in his 3rd year and really came into his own last year, couldn't play more than 21 minutes in the finals because defensively he was a liability. He couldn't stay on the floor long enough because he would break the team's defensive core. So what did they do? They split the minutes with him and Gary Payton, who was incredible. Gary Payton would literally come off the bench and just put a stop to whether it was Jaylen Brown, whether it is Jason Tatum, whether it is Derek White, whether it is Marcus Smart. He did it all. He would come in and there was literally a single possession where he guarded White, Tatum, and Brown all in one possession and put a stop to all of it. He was a gift from God to Steph Curry to give him some help that he rightfully deserves. And they fucked it up because they couldn't bother to move a piece that was obviously a project and raw and not the right fit for the Warriors. They made their own bed. Look at them now. James Wiseman, unusable. Jonathan Kuminga talking about, oh, we're gonna play him more. Oh, we're excited to incorporate him into the rotation. Playing against the Kings at home, couldn't play him more than a single half because it was a disaster with him on the floor. He is not ready and he will not be ready come playoff time, just like he wasn't ready last year. These kids that are 19 years old, 20 years old are not supposed to be championship pieces. And we're seeing that in real time now. They're so unusable that they are using two-way players like Lamb and Ty Jerome. To be fair, Ty Jerome looks like a pretty good player. And even Lamb, he plays hard. He knows his role. Do you understand the level of disrespect that you have shown to Steph Curry by building the team in this way? And it's not even correct. These guys are not even going to stay long enough for you to see them as your potential future. I'm going to get to that later in this video. And this video has already gone a lot longer than I wanted it to. But I think this is going to have to be like a podcast thing because there's just too much nuance. Anyway, they never did this to Michael Jordan. They never did this to LeBron James. They never did this to Shaq. They never did this to Kobe. I'm talking about them in their primes. You build a solid core, a solid structure of guys that can provide real support in the regular season, well into the playoffs. This is how you want to build a roster when you have a championship contending team. Stop being crazy. Stop being greedy. Stop disrespecting the GOAT. In this way, you are ruining what should be an easy path to a 5th championship. Stop this before this season runs out of time and it's too late. Recognize what you have in Stephen Curry and fix the situation well before the deadline. Reason number 2, Stephen Curry is actually still in his prime. As a matter of fact, he may be the greatest version of himself that he's ever been. Look at what he's been doing. It's been overshadowed by the fact that the Warriors are currently 4-7, but look at what he did against the Kings. Look at what he's doing so far through 11 games. He is 50, 40, 90, averaging 32 points, 7 rebounds, 7 assists. This guy's going crazy. This guy at age 34, going into age 35, I mean, this is beyond aging like fine wine. This guy is continuing to evolve and continuing to somehow get better and becoming a better version of himself year after year after year. I mean, this is crazy. This is almost unheard of. This is not even Michael Jordan was doing this at age 34 going into age 35. This is insane. He's a 6'2" point guard who is leading the team in rebounds. He's only getting stronger and he's only getting more accurate and he's only getting better. We don't know how much longer this is going to go for, but based on the level of play that he has shown, he's showing that he has many more years left of dominant basketball in him. It is not the time to be talking about life after Curry. It makes no sense. You think James Wiseman and Kuminga are going to sniff anything close to what Stephen Curry is right now for your team? This is nonsense. He is a gift sent to you by God. He's having the most incredible season of his career and people can't properly appreciate it because your fucking team sucks. Your roster construction blows chunks. Everybody off the bench is a non-reliable from a defensive standpoint. And if you're not reliable defensively, you do not win championships. This is obvious. This is basketball 101. You are fucking this up epically. Not even Jerry Reinsdorf fucked up this bad. You look ridiculous. You will be ridiculed for years to come because of your greedy plan to think that you're somehow going to start rebuilding right now and fucking up half the roster in order to do so. You have 5 kids on the roster. 4 of them are 20-year-olds. Wiseman is the oldest one at 21. Those 5 guys are eating up over $22 million of the team's salary. And you're talking about you can't keep veterans that are proven championship pieces because you want to see what these kids can do? What are we doing here? Please make it make sense. People try to sugarcoat this and say, oh, we respect it. We understand you're trying to... No, this is garbage. This is trash. This plan is one of the worst things I've ever seen in my life. No owner has done a superstar who has given him this much, this kind of treatment. I mean, honestly, these 2 reasons alone should be good enough for Lacob to stop all of this. But I'm going to give you 3 more. Reason number 3. The Warriors' bench depth is dog. And I mean dog. Look at the production of the Warriors' bench. They are certifiably one of the worst in the league. And if you're the worst in the league at something, you're not winning a championship. You'll be lucky to make the playoffs at this point if you keep things the way they are. You can talk about Dante DiVincenzo all you want. You can talk about JaMychal Green all you want. But these guys have not produced. Even when Dante was in the lineup, he was food. He wasn't playing well. He wasn't helping the team win. At best, he showed flashes. He's been injury prone throughout his career, and he's injured almost right away as the season started. What assurance do you have that this guy, no offense to him, but he's a 6'4" white dude, he's gonna what? Come into the playoffs and do what? What is he gonna do? Is he gonna put a stop to a guy like Devin Booker? Is he gonna come in and limit a guy like Luka Doncic? Is he going to somehow guard a speed demon like Ja Morant? He's not going to be the guy that comes in and get reliable stops and give the Warriors reliable minutes the way a guy like Gary Payton could. I mean, not many guys could, obviously. I've said all along that Gary Payton is a gift from God. He is a cheat code defensively. He's so solid. He gives you so many easy buckets in transition because he just strips guys. He just makes guys look silly. He makes guys that are bigger than him actually look small. He makes guys look scared to be dribbling in front of him. These guys don't grow on trees. You lost them. It was a historic mistake. But it is what it is. You have to make adjustments. Right now, the depth chart looks like this. You got Jordan Poole, who is a non-defender. You have Moses Moody, who I actually really like, but in his second year, he's been inconsistent. You have Jonathan Kuminga, who I'm going to get to later. You have James Wiseman, who I'm going to get to later. These are the guys that have been in your rotation. You have Kai Jerome. You have Anthony Lamb. And you're so desperate that ancient Andre Iguodala, who is supposed to play a mentor role, ramping up in hopes that he can make a difference for the team. The Warriors, from a defensive standpoint, are broken structurally when the bench enters the game. They don't have an anchor. They hope that Wiseman was going to be that guy. He's never going to be that guy for the Warriors. So forget that. You already lost $10 million worth of talent that was supposed to backline your defense. Now all you have is JaMychal Green. What happens when one of the Warriors starters get injured? I mean, what happens if Steph Curry gets injured? You're fucked, you're screwed, you're done. This season is over. What happens if Loon or Draymond gets injured? God forbid, because Wiggins and Loon are super durable players. The Warriors have been blessed with at least a couple of players that are just Iron Men in this league, right? I mean, Loon wasn't always like that, but last year he didn't miss a game. So you're hoping that he can continue to be that strong and sturdy and not get injured. But you're desperately hoping that your starting 5 stays intact, because if one of them is gone, your team will be compromised. If Draymond, like last season, misses like half the season or something like that, you're screwed. Your defense is fucked. You're not going to win enough games at this point because you don't have a proper replacement for him off the bench. Last year they had Otto Porter Jr., who actually was quite capable of replacing Draymond in the starting lineup. As a matter of fact, they went 9-2 when Otto Porter Jr. was in the starting lineup. They don't have another piece like that right now, and that's what the Warriors need. They need at least a guy or two who can replace a starter in a pinch. They don't have a guy like that. They have Jordan Poole, but he's not a defensive core piece. You need one off the bench, plain and simple. It can't be all starters. The Warriors have one of the best starting lineups in the league, if not the best. It's not the problem. The problem is that this is not how you build a roster. The roster construction, the way they're building it, is comical. They're building as if they are a lottery rebuilding team. This is ridiculous. You cannot do both. The bench needs an upgrade, and that means you need to trade some pieces. And the guys that are eating up the most money on this roster are James Wiseman, Jonathan Kuminga, and Moses Moody. Again, I think Moody is good enough to keep. The other two, on the other hand, their overall attitude, their misfit with this team, it just doesn't work. And now I'm gonna get to reason 4 for why the 2 timeline thing must stop. And it is James Wiseman. Where to start when it comes to this kid? I have nothing against him. Obviously, from a personal standpoint, why would I have anything against a kid who was drafted by the Warriors? It wasn't his choice to be drafted by the Warriors. The Warriors drafted him. From the get-go, this was a weird situation because the Warriors ended up being a lottery team because obviously they lost Klay Thompson and they lost Stephen Curry basically in the same year. Of course, you're missing those two guys, you're not going to do anything. Kind of like how the Spurs missed the playoffs that one year and ended up with Tim Duncan, right? Sorry to break this to you, they did not have a Tim Duncan in that draft, nor did the Warriors have the number 1 overall pick. Now, it was a unique situation. The Spurs got a player who was ready to play and dominate in the NBA because he played 4 years of college. He wasn't some kid who played 1 year, had no fundamentals, and no idea how to play the game. It's a completely different situation that worked out amazingly for the Spurs. Anyway, immediately, James Wiseman was a misfit with the Warriors. Why? Because he came into the league interested in ball handling, shooting, isoing in the post, making moves in the paint, hook shots, playing pick and roll. These were his strengths. Unfortunately, nobody taught him how to play defense. Nobody taught him all the crucial things that are conducive to winning basketball. He does not know how to play winning basketball, and that was apparent. After about 10 games or so, I declared him a project because he was. He didn't know how to play the game. He didn't know when to cut. He didn't know when to screen. He didn't know how to set a screen. He didn't even know how to catch the ball at the NBA level. This guy was a certified disaster from a usability standpoint for any team that is trying to make the playoffs. So he ended up being an incredibly raw player to start. Not only that, all the things that he was good at, the Warriors did not need. What the Warriors needed is a guy who had brains, who could protect the paint, who could move his feet, be a lob threat. Pretty simple. Steve Kerr was looking for a Luke Longley kind of guy. He was looking for an Andrew Bogut of sorts. And this is the kind of role that is fit to play the center position for the system that the Warriors have. Something that James Wiseman doesn't fit at all. This was not the right guy for a Steve Kerr system. Not at all. And you have to keep in mind that James Wiseman, number 2 overall pick, lottery pick. Lottery picks are for lottery teams. For teams that are rebuilding. They suck, they're trash, they're hopeless, and that's why they're in the lottery, because they suck. They are not competing anytime soon. They are looking to rebuild. They are looking for a piece that can jumpstart their quest to start anew with new talent, and they're willing to take guys that are young, that are not ready to play winning basketball, but develop them into it and help them become whatever they're capable of becoming. That's the kind of team that James Wiseman needed to end up on. He needed an opportunity to grow on his own timeline without the pressure of performing not just for a playoff team, but for a title favorite team with title favorite pieces. He doesn't want to play some fringe role. He wants to become a franchise level player. He wanted to become Joel Embiid. He wanted to become Kevin Garnett. He didn't want to become Bogut. He didn't want to become Longley. He didn't want to become Looney. These are not the things that he was training to become. And yet the Warriors somehow magically think that he's just gonna become that willfully, willingly. It takes incredible character, it takes incredible IQ, it takes incredible selflessness for a player to fit into a Steve Kerr system. Steve Kerr's system is very rigid. It looks for very specific types of players. If you're good at pick and roll as a point guard, you're not gonna make it on a Steve Kerr system because they don't run the pick and roll. The fit is all messed up. This is not fair to Steve Kerr. This is not fair to Steph Curry. This is not fair to the team. And this is not fair to James Wiseman. He was drafted into the wrong situation. And not only that, he came in and showed how unready he is to play at the NBA level in so many different ways. They should have seen it from the get-go. I mean, if I could see it after 4 games, why can't a professional NBA organization also see the same thing? Why do we have to wait this long only to see that he's still a raw project? He should have been off the roster to ensure that the Warriors would be able to keep a guy like Gary Payton or even Otto Porter Jr. with the money that James Wiseman was eating up. If you could get rid of that, or another piece they could have used last season in the playoffs, because remember, they were really short-handed even with Otto Porter and Gary Payton. One of those guys get injured. You know what the Warriors did against the Grizzlies in the playoffs? They ran a 6-man rotation because their bench was that unreliable. Meanwhile, the front office, the owner, the coach, they're all talking about, oh, it all worked because we won even with the kids on the roster. But they won despite having those kids on the roster. They were not usable. They tried to start Kuminga. It was a disaster. It came to a point where Stephen Curry and Draymond Green had to go to the coaching staff and plead to take Kuminga out of the rotation and put Looney in there. And that's how they managed to win that series. Imagine if they could have used $10 million for a different piece. Maybe a 1-year rental even. Those things are worth spending on. 1-year rentals are worth spending on when you have a championship core and you just need 1 or 2 more pieces to fill the gaps. Instead, they held on to James Wiseman the whole year. Ultimately, they held him over Gary Payton, who literally helped them to a championship, which I said earlier in the video, championships are super elusive. Don't be confused by the presence of Steph Curry and believe that they are easy to win. They are not. But there's just such a lack of sense of urgency from this front office, from this ownership, thinking, oh, we can do whatever, blah, 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 and we're gonna win anyway, and we're gonna be seen as geniuses. It's all Steph Curry. Wake up. It's not you, it's him. And you're taking what Steph Curry and the core have done and taking credit for it and saying things like, oh, we're geniuses because we won, even though we're rebuilding with the kids too. They won despite that plan, and now you've lost more key pieces, and now those kids are not ready, and now your team looks fucked. Wake up, for the love of God. I am simply trying to help you with some common sense about all of this. Okay, now we get to number 5, and that is Jonathan Kuminga. I'm not gonna say a lot about this because I've already said what I needed to say from the standpoint of James Wiseman. Kuminga is a very similar situation. He's nowhere near as raw as James Wiseman. He's nowhere near as unready as James Wiseman. But from an overall standpoint, taking James Wiseman out of the equation, he's raw. He's not ready to contribute right now. He's not ready to contribute deep into the playoffs this season. You couldn't even play him for more than 1/2 against a 3-5 team in the Sacramento Kings at home. Before the Kings game, Kerr came out talking about, oh, I'm excited to play Kuminga more, have him be in the rotation, see what he can do, blah, 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 blah. Second half comes, Anthony Lamb gets all of the Kuminga minutes. Why? Because they were a mess with Kuminga in the game. You have to face the truth and realize when players are not ready fundamentally from a basketball IQ standpoint. He doesn't know where to be half the time. There is no urgency to his movements. He doesn't want to do this. He doesn't want to play in this system. He doesn't want to play this fringe role. He was also a lottery pick. He wants to be one of the primary options and he wants to be featured. This is something that the Warriors cannot provide for him. Not this year, not next year, nor the year after that. Why? Because Andrew Wiggins plays Kuminga's position, and Kuminga is not taking Wiggins' role in Curry's era. This is just not gonna happen. Look at how long a guy like Wiggins, for him to have actual value as an NBA player. Before he came to the Warriors, people were talking about trading him for a bag of peanuts. People were saying he was a bust. He was useless. It takes a long time for players to figure out their true role in the NBA. And if they don't run into the right pieces that can provide that role for that player, sometimes it never works out for that player. Andrew Wiggins was actually on the verge of that. And he was what, 24, 25 when he came to the Warriors, right? So it takes many years before a player becomes something. Even with the Warriors, Wiggins continued to develop. He wasn't the same player last year as when he first came to the Warriors. He had a lot of bad habits, even as a 24, 25-year-old, that he had to dispose of to play championship level basketball. The guy's what, 27 now? He's still growing into himself. He's still learning about himself. This is how long it takes for players to develop into playoff pieces and championship pieces. And you're talking about Kuminga, a 20-year-old, doing that right away? Are you crazy? Are you out of your mind? Do you not know how NBA talent works? Have you not seen this time and time again? Why is it that me, not in the NBA, not part of any organization, why is it that I am able to see this, but a professional organization, a championship organization, is not capable of seeing these things? This is worse than a kid who thinks he knows basketball because he plays fantasy basketball. Like, this is the level of IQ that you're working with by keeping Wiseman and Kuminga on this team for as long as you have. And once again, this is not fair to Kuminga. He deserves to develop and grow and be allowed to make mistakes and play the role that he was meant to play as a lottery pick. He deserves that opportunity. He deserves to grow. He deserves to have the chance to start, and the Warriors are not going to be able to give him that. So what even is the point of developing a guy who is unhappy playing the role that he's currently playing? He's not even good in that role, and ultimately he wants to start, and he knows he won't be able to start with the Warriors, so why is he going to want to stay here anyway? It's a misfit. It doesn't work. And he's eating up $6 million worth of space. That's the same money that Otto Porter took to go to Toronto. Everybody can say all they want about, oh, Otto Porter's wife wanted to go to Toronto and that's why he made that decision. But pay him properly, take care of him, and I'm sure his wife would be okay with taking $6 million and staying in another location to watch her husband thrive. You don't know how the situation works out. The guy actually gets offered the money that he deserves. But no, the Warriors are stuck on this crazy, let's keep all the lottery picks and let's hold them for the future when Steph Curry retires. God knows when that is. If you're gonna go with a plan like this, at least time it right. At least see a decline in your franchise player. The guy's trajectory is the greatest player of all time. I have to make a whole separate video about that, but for now, fix the immediate situation. Right this ship. It still can be done. Trade the kids. Forget the bridge. Forget the two timeline. You already have building blocks in Jordan Poole, Andrew Wiggins, Kevon Looney. These guys are still very young. Moses Moody can also grow into his own. You have a very solid core of guys that you can look forward to in the future without trying to keep every single one of your picks.